Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know we are standing between you and lunch, and it's a very uncomfortable position to be in. So what I'm really going to do is to jump in right away and talk about, overhauling your technology program. Rakesh will add more value to the session by talking about the tangible issues in putting your technology program together. And I'm going to talk about the vision that all of us need to have before we really even start talking about technology. And for me, really, listening to the whole conversation in the last 1.5 days is more about, a very important question that comes to my mind, which is that I think it's time for all of us to get back to the drawing board and really ask ourselves, what is the purpose of education? There has been talk on higher education, there's been talk about technology in education, cloud computing, et cetera, but I think somewhere we're kind of missing the point, or maybe throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and it's time to really go back to the basics. For me, the purpose of education today in this entire changing dynamics is about preparing individuals to be effective learners, responsible citizens, and to be contributors to a society that itself is in the throes of change. So I think that for me is the real essence of what education should be doing. And this actually poses two very important questions. One is, what is the role of education then in ensuring that it prepares the current and future generations? We have to remember, yesterday people talked about the long gestation period in schools, and so you're talking about essentially a 10 to 15 year time frame from the point where you start to the point where the child gets out of the school. So you're talking about, one, the current generation, and two, about the future generations. And so what really is this, the role of education in ensuring that the present and the future generations are equipped to be this kind of learners, effective, responsible, contributing members of the society. How does education prepare you to be that when the society itself is actually becoming extremely digitalized? So within that format, what does education prepare you to do as a member of the society? And two, really to kind of ensure what our duty is in equipping the children, the child, and the learners to be adequately prepared to deal with the cultural challenges that are impacting our society as a whole. Because this is a cycle. Whatever impacts us as children actually comes back. We reinvest that back into the society. So Rakesh, from a very point of view that we want to talk about today, about overhauling your technology program, I think it's time to really start talking about these two aspects of education before we really get into the tangibles.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashish. So, okay, when I read this topic, how to overhaul your technology program, kind of felt a little, and I could almost imagine the faces of school principals, directors, administrators. I could imagine their faces, and what came to my mind was these guys would be thinking, hey, what's that? We've barely started to understand technology in schools, and there you are talking about an overhaul. So for the past few years, 4 or 5 years, there was an onslaught of technological solutions for education, and school owners and, like I said, administrators have barely begun to understand what it means for their institutes, and now we are talking about overhauling. So isn't it a little too much here? But that before we even understand what they can do, we are talking about an overhaul. But see, as with any other technology, technology in education also follows a cycle. Technology follows a cycle. Whenever a new technology is introduced into the market, there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of expectation from that technology. That actually is called the hype cycle. So it starts from a technological trigger. So something, some research, some path-breaking discovery by somebody triggers some technological innovation. I mean, for example, some technologies which are currently in that stage of a trigger stage are let's say, brain computing, biochips. They are the trigger stage, right? Once a technology is triggered, then there's a phase of, inflated expectations. That ये technology तो दुनिया बदल डालेगी, right? So a lot of technologies go through that phase that, this technology will change the face of retailing, this technology will change the face we transact on in a bank, this technology will change the face of education, right? So that's a typical second stage of a hype cycle. 3D printing, for example, currently virtual reality is at that stage right now.
But Rakesh, I mean, sorry to interrupt you here. I think it's already been established well beyond any doubt that the big game changer in education is technology, but really the big disruptor in education is going to be, or is, I mean, we already agree about that, is the ubiquitous use of the internet. And the last 2 days we've seen people talk again and again about that. And I'm kind of like wondering about, this whole dynamics that you're talking about a trigger point, which brings me to a very interesting conversation that I had with one of the very high-profile schools in Bombay. And the question that they had was that, so what's the distinction now between hardware and software? And how do you kind of analyze all of that? I see a couple of school principals here, and I want to draw them into the conversation. Madhuri, I know that you've been doing a lot of work on that. So can you just tell us a little bit? I mean, I think people are drooping off with hunger. So who else to bring on board? But one of you to kind of just let us know about that. I mean, I'm curious to know that when you talk about technology in schools, do you really just focus on the hardware, or I mean, how do you make your decisions?
Yes, I mean, it would be really great to hear from the school principals and administrators who are sitting over here that what has been your experience with technology and what do you expect technological providers to deliver.